Hello everyone, this is Erik, the Asian movie enthusiast, and this is my review of Maniac Driver, a Japanese exploitation thriller from 2020 that was directed by Kurando Mitsutake. Now this man previously directed Gunwoman from 2014. I have reviewed that movie on my channel. Very solid exploitation thriller. Be sure to check that out if you like, edgier Japanese thriller fare. Also, Mitsutake's audio commentary for Evil Dead Trap is one of the most unhinged commentaries you'll ever hear. So check that one out if you want to. But what about Maniac Driver? Well, a deranged taxi driver appears to be randomly stalking and killing various young women on the streets of Tokyo. His descent into madness follows a personal tragedy that has since left him in search of a worthy victim to satisfy his own bloodlust and possible death. But is anything as it seems? Framed by a vibrant retro 80s soundtrack and flashy psychedelic colors, Japan's top adult stars are portrayed as lascivious victims in this stunning, gory neo-Giallo. It's quite a wordful of a description. But yes, Maniac Driver is advertised as a Japanese Giallo movie. It even says it during the opening credits. Now, for those who are unfamiliar with Giallo films, they are basically a subgenre of Italian film that reached the height of production probably during the early 1970s. And you could describe them overall as like a blend of mystery and slasher movies, kind of thrown in together, even though the slasher craze came afterward, you know what I mean? And some people consider the Giallo film to be one of the key precursors to the slasher film, but they had a number of distinct characteristics that appeared many times within the subgenre in addition to the stuff that you would typically see in a slasher. So some of these characteristics are seen and found in Maniac Driver. Now this has bloody violence inflicted upon women, black gloves, knives as a killing weapon, and some very colorful lighting. The biker helmet in this film reminded me of the villain in Strip Nude for Your Killer, and the noises he makes reminded me of the quacking sounds from the New York Ripper. Another thing about Italian Giallo films, they have some of the best titles ever. But that's a side note. Now, unfortunately, Maniac Driver does lack most of the story elements that are typically seen in a traditional Giallo. For example, there were frequently investigative elements, sometimes performed by a detective, but other times performed by a regular citizen who wants to find out what happened to a loved one or an acquaintance. And that element is almost non-existent in Maniac Driver, which also severely lacks the mystery component. And that is a problem because that element is usually the glue that holds everything together in kind of a Giallo film. In fact, this entire movie just kind of feels like a bunch of scenes. There's almost no story progression, which kind of makes it a bit dull to watch. Now, the opening scene in this is pretty trashy, which is consistent with some Giallo films. Some are classier than others, a bit of a spectrum. But in this film, a woman showers and touches herself in erotic ways and before getting stabbed to death. So it's a pretty good opening, actually. Pretty good gore in this, involving the knife penetration into skin. So it's actually a quite scandalous and entertaining opening to the film. Now later on, there's a pretty cool first-person perspective scene involving a flashlight and a knife, as well as a solid throat-cutting death. So I will give this film credit. The opening act is pretty eventful and decent enough. Now, unfortunately, the middle act is where things start to gas out here. There's just too many sex scenes, a few of which last just way too long, and other scenes that do drag out. For example, there's like this time-lapse scene in a taxi where they put a camera right inside the taxi and they have the actor drive around and they show the customers get in and out of the taxi and it goes like fast speed, fast forward speed. And this scene is repeated multiple times in the movie. So it's really was unnecessary. You know what I mean? And this film does have a short 75-minute runtime, but it still kind of drags a little bit, which is not good. That's a pretty big flaw, I think, and I did start to lose interest during the middle section on what was happening. The last act, things pick up again. Another pretty good first-person perspective knife scene that's pretty cool. The finale of this film, though, like the last 10 minutes, are kind of disappointing. There's like no excitement, and it's just kind of odd. There are a decent number of death scenes in the film overall, a few of which are pretty good, like I've mentioned, but everything else of the film is just pretty flat. The over-the-top lighting will remind you of a Dario Argento movie, very colorful, but in this case it has less craftsmanship and lacks nuance to make it truly beautiful and effective. Still, I do enjoy color in my horror movies, even if it's blunt. The nighttime city lights are nice as well. This actually takes place in Shinjuku, which is a district within Tokyo that I've visited many times. So it's definitely neat to see familiar places in a movie. At one point, the main character gives the finger to the Tokyo Metropolitan Government Building, and there are some little nuances here and there, like references to politicians and stuff like that. So there is some content in this. I just wish the story was a little bit more engaging. I did listen to the director commentary on the recent Blu-ray release. Apparently the title, Maniac Driver, is a play on words, with direct references to two specific films. Maniac, the William Lustig film from 1980, which is a very cool flick, and Taxi Driver from Martin Scorsese from 1976. And so he had these two influences that he blended into an Italian Giallo kind of template. So this is just a phenomenal idea for a film, but just the overall execution just was kind of lacking in my opinion. And one amazing fact about this movie, it was shot in less than 5 days. Like, that's ridiculous. And it obviously had a minuscule budget. And I think that did weigh on like just the film in general a bit too much. But unlike something like Takashi Shimizu's film Marabito from 2004, which had like an 8-day shooting schedule, and that movie was awesome, this one, it's just not that entertaining of a flick. So it's not terrible. It has certain redeeming factors that I've talked about, but I just think it's just generally kind of mediocre overall. So if you're interested in watching it anyway, it is available on Blu-ray. But let me know what you think of this one if you've seen it. I could understand some people maybe enjoying it more than I did, but give me your thoughts below. And as always, I'll see you next time.